Hey, Upper East Siders. Non-judging breakfast pod here. Your one and only source into the scandalous lives of the Manhattan elite. Who am I? Well, my name is Leif, and I've been watching the show since its original run. And with me is fellow tipster Steve 91.
And I'm watching for the first time.
We're going to be working our way through the iconic 2000s TV series Gossip Girl, one takedown at a time.
We'll be dissecting each piece of juicy gossip and analyzing storylines, all while admiring some and sometimes mocking the fabulous fashion, devious schemes, and petty rivalries.
All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get into it? We're going to be going through the pilot episode first. It was written by Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage. And on some sites, they do give credit to Cecily von Ziesgar, who did write the books it was based on, but not on all sites. The original air date was, so it actually came out on iTunes first. It was downloadable September 14th, 2007. And then it was actually CTV in Canada on September 18th, and then on the CW on September 19th.
Wow, I didn't realize iTunes was streaming shows already by 2007.
Well, it wasn't streaming. It was it was a free download. You download the episode, and then I think later on you could download for like $1 each or something like that.
That's
And then so I actually wanted to get into that. Gossip Girl had decent ratings for the CW the first two seasons, but then they definitely dropped fast. It did manage to get 6 seasons because they did realize that people were watching online quite a bit on iTunes, and then also they on the CW website they did stream like the past like 2 or 3 episodes you could watch.
okay.
So yeah, so it was written by Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage mainly. Josh Schwartz is obviously came from the OC, and then at the same time he was also developing Chuck.
Yeah, which I was a big Chuck fan.
Yes.
Most of the way through.
Yeah, I actually did watch that from day one. Gossip Girl, I didn't pick up until midway through season 4 because I actually discovered the OC while I was in college. I binged that, and then binged Gossip Girl, caught up on the mid-season break. Back then with network TV, so the first season you had 18 episodes, then season 2 you had 25, season 3 through 5 had 23 episodes each.
Usually, yeah, 23 or 24,
and
depending
then
on.
then you had a shortened 6th season. But the way things were done back then, it's different than from streaming. Shows were written with the concept that people would only watch 1 in 3 episodes. So you had a lot of resetting back to the status quo at the end of episodes, so people could get if they missed a couple of episodes, they could come right back in.
Right, and because you didn't always have that ability to pick up right where you left off, you would have to have episodes that someone could watch the episode you're showing and understand the entire plot that's going on. You had to tell a complete story in every episode.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't have cliffhangers quite the same way. Yeah. You did, but you couldn't. You had to complete story arcs every week.
So they did bring in a veteran teen drama director to direct the pilot, Mark Pisnarski. He did several episodes of My So-Called Life,
which was like really a show that spoke to my generation. My So-Called Life, and the start of Claire Danes, like really big for us.
Yes,
and Gen Xers.
Jared Leto, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Jared Leto. Yeah, Leto.
He also directed Everwood, 2 episodes of Veronica Mars, 2 episodes of the 90210 reboot, Friday Night Lights, Riverdale, and then he did do one movie that I did see this with Josh Hartnett and Lily Sobowski, or I'm probably saying her name wrong. It was pretty bad, but I did see it because I did watch a lot of. It was that was my high school year, so I did watch a lot of teen entertainment.
Was Friday Night Lights, is that the show?
Yes,
Okay.
he directed a couple episodes of the show.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I forget the guy whose name who directed and wrote the movie and also wrote the show. It was the showrunner for the show, but not the director for each
Okay.
episode.
Yeah, I did watch the first season of Friday Night Lights and some of the second season. Then it got into like murder and shit, and I was like, well, okay.
Yeah, the first season was definitely really good. This it did. Yeah, the I did not like that storyline with the goofy friend.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm forgetting his name. Anyways, back to Gossip Girl.
Yes.
This episode, the pilot, at a privileged prep school for teens on Manhattan's Upper East Side, the students first learn that Serena Vanderwoodson is back in town. They learn the all-important news in their lives from the internet blog of the all-knowing, albeit ultra-secretive Gossip Girl. No one knows Gossip Girl's identity, but everyone in this exclusive and complicated vicious circle relies on her website and text messages for the latest scoop. Even Serena's closest friend, Blair Waldorf, is surprised to find that Serena has suddenly ended her self-imposed exile from a boarding school in New England and returned to Manhattan for school. Once the Upper East Side's most notorious party girl, Serena's reasons for returning are mysterious, although they may have something to do with her younger brother Eric, who's secretly in the hospital following a suicide attempt, which is kept under wraps by their overprotective mother Lily. Whatever the reasons, the change in Serena is obvious, especially to Blair, whose friendship with Serena has always been competitive and difficult. Into this crowd comes Dan Humphrey, a kid from Brooklyn whose freshman sister Jenny tries a little too hard to fit into Blair's circle of gossip friends, who include Gossip Girl's contacts Isabel and Cotty. Blair's nice guy boyfriend, Nate Archibald, is also troubled by Serena's return for his best friend, Chuck Bass, the school's snobbish, cynic, and resident bad boy. Knows about a fling that Serena and Nate had, which is why Serena left town to avoid a scandal which, in the snobbish world of high society, is social suicide. Elsewhere, Dan and Jenny's father Rufus, a former rock musician and art gallery operator, also has a return of feelings for Serena and Eric's mother Lily. Wow, that was a lot.
It's a thorough recap.
Yes, it is. So we enter in on the train with Young Folks by Peter, Bjorn, and John. We immediately recognize that this is a Josh Schwartz show. Josh Schwartz loves the indie rock and
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very current in his music tastes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those songs that as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh wow, I remember this. Like it's really iconic for the time. It really puts you back into that late 2000s when there was a big push in that indie music when everybody was building home studios.
Yes, and I think Josh Schwartz actually played a big factor in the popularization of that genre, through the OC and Gossip
Oh
Girl and
yeah.
Chuck.
Yeah, well, and you think about those. There are those TV shows where they would literally sell the soundtrack from a show because they were building that kind of audience with it, and I absolutely agree with that. You think of shows like the OC that it would say like this episode featuring music by, and those sort of things, and I think that the same thing could be said about Joss Whedon with Buffy core music, as I
Yes.
like to call
Yes.
it. The stuff you'd hear at the Bronze.
Yes. All right, so we do see Serena on the train, and she arrives at Grand Central Station, and we are immediately introduced to the concept of Gossip Girl when Melanie91 takes a pic of Serena arriving.
Yeah, and we instantly again are put into that time period, that late 2000s, when it was the dawn of social media, and when it was the dawn of, you know, anyone could be on the paparazzi. You know, anyone could spot somebody at this point, and anyone can catch a picture and post it. And so it really puts you into that mindset. And also, it immediately tells you, it sets up so much in that first bit that this person's been gone for a while. It's important that she's back, and that random people are spotting her and posting about her coming back. So she's important to a lot of people that she doesn't recognize. Because Serena doesn't talk to Melanie 91. So it also tells you that Serena is isolated and alone, and, you know, in her fame a little bit.
Yes, definitely. And so also we see at Grand Central Station, as we later find out, Manhattan, after all, is a small island. We see Dan and Jenny returning from Hudson after a weekend with their mother. So we kind of know right away that their parents are separated. They're meeting their dad, Rufus, who is a former rocker, one of the top 10 forgotten artists of the 90s.
Yeah, the number 9 on the top 10 forgotten bands of the 90s list. Which also, I love that this was 7 years after the 90s and his band was forgotten.
They're already doing a list of. There's already a top 10 list.
There's already a top 10 list.
Yes. So we see Dan staring at Serena Longley. His stalker crush is back in town. She's been gone for about a year, and yes, everyone's curious to find out why she's back.
Yeah, and they do the great setup there with, you know, with Dan and Jenny, with Jenny making it known right away, like, you know, it's still not going to happen. It's been your whole life, you know, just setting that up right there, then and there, that there's history there, that there's a one-sided history. And once again, somebody recognizing Serena that Serena isn't recognizing.
Yes. So then we jump over to the Waldorf townhouse, and don't get used to the townhouse because it switches to a penthouse after this first episode.
Yeah.
Not uncommon. They build sets after the first episode. This was just probably someone's actual house that they recorded in.
Yeah, exactly. So often, and it's not even there. I mean, so many times on pilot episodes, when you don't know if you're going to get an episode 2, it's, okay, we're going to shoot this where we can, and then if we get the budget, then we build sets.
Then we build sets, yes. And so, like, after this episode, most of the interior shots are all on sets, but there is a lot of location. Everything is in New York, and actually adds a lot to the fandom of the show, because in New York, if you're going to be shooting on the street, you have to put up notices beforehand, like several weeks beforehand, so people knew exactly where they're going to shoot.
Yeah.
And so there's fans there. There's stolen scripts from the set. There's photos of the set, you know. Mm-hmm. So, like, there's all kinds of spoilers online and, you know, stuff going on. The fandom was really crazy. And it really affected the show quite a bit, because it was one of the first shows where you could tell the writers were listening to the fans online. They were definitely paying attention.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So, speaking of replacing the townhouse with the penthouse later on, the actress who plays Blair's mother is replaced after this first episode as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was a good choice, because the actress that replaced her, Margaret Collins, is definitely a little more motherly looking. The first actress was very young. And we already have the young parents in Rufus and Lily, that I think we should have some, like, normal age. I mean, these are rich people. They're not, you know, running off having kids early. They're getting married, going to college. And
these are people, and the really big point to that is that, and we learn this in other parts in the episode, these are people who had their lives planned out for them
Yes.
with a little bit of nuance to make some decisions, but that these are people that had no choice but to follow these footsteps that were laid out for them, and they're trying, and they have those same expectations of their kids, and that's just a recurring theme in the beginning of this show.
Yes. And yes, so speaking of that, we see Nate Archibald with his father, the captain. We assume he's a sailing enthusiast of some kind, presumably. But I don't think that's ever really addressed in the show, why he's called the captain. And then we also see Chuck with two of the minions, Cotty and Iz. I don't think they're named here, but that's who they are. They will be recurring. And he offers to go take a puff with Nate. So
Yeah.
they are stoners, apparently.
From that first scene, I had that feeling with Cotty and Iz of there's more to these two than we're seeing already. Like there was just something. There was like I had a feeling of like I feel like I need to watch out for these two at some point because they seemed to be so. They seem to be written almost like window dressing in their first scene. And I always feel like window dressing is there to look at, you know? So it was
Okay.
just something in my head with those two.
Yeah, I mean, I will say they are recurring characters, so they will be coming back. And so that's it for that scene. We then move to Blair and Nate getting hot and heavy in her bedroom. And then Serena arrives at the party. And when Blair's mom yells in that Serena's here, we definitely see Nate's very interested.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an instant weirdness there. That comes through.
Yeah, and Blair wants to seal the deal. It looks like, but she reluctantly puts her clothes back on, and they go out. Serena's talking to her mom. She's looking for quote unquote him, and so we don't know who that is, but we later find out that's her brother Eric.
Yeah, yeah, and and there's also isn't there also that moment where they see each other, where Nate and Serena see each other? Was that at that same time?
Yeah, so Nate and Serena lock eyes, and then Blair walks out of the room between them. So you get the great shot of them like kind of looking at
Yeah, yeah, and it says so much in that, just the way that they shoot it, just the her how uncomfortable she looks, how happy he looks, and then when Blair just steps in between, it's almost heartbreaking.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
And then so we also see like Blair's with her minions, and she's trying to play it off like that she knew that Serena's coming back, but it's pretty obvious that she did not know that Serena's coming back. Yeah. So then we switch to Serena at the Ostroff Center, which is presumably some type of celebrity rehab type place for rich people to, get over benders or whatever they're trying to hide from the general public. And she's looking at her brother sleeping in bed. We don't know exactly what happened at this point, but I think we do see his wrist bandaged. So
we do. It is evident that there was a suicide attempt. I feel like immediately when you meet him, I got that impression. Or maybe it was the conversation they had, but I just remember feeling like, this is, yeah.
So then the final scene before the end of the cold open is Dan looking at his laptop. That's in this really weird looking fake cat behind the laptop. I don't know what the set designer was looking at there. They decided to put that weird fake cat out there. And he's stalking Serena again, trying to figure out why she's back. And presumably, participating in some kind of online discussion.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and like you said, it is just he's I feel like he's not even as interested in the gossip side of it as much as it is just wow, she's back.
And we are back for Act 1. Serena wakes up to her brother Eric with a bandage on his wrist. Serena is back in town for her brother who clearly attempted suicide, and Lily comes in completely avoiding the situation, and Serena confronts her about her avoidance.
Yeah, and instantly we see that conflict between Lily and Serena, and the yeah, and the sweeping problems under a rug versus directly handling problems between the two of them.
Yes, Lily is definitely concerned about appearances, and we see that throughout the episode, making up various stories about where Eric has been, visiting people in Miami, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and obviously embarrassed. And there's the side of it that is, oh, I don't want to bring shame to the family. I don't want to bring shame to him, but it's also I don't want to bring shame to me that you're seeing her come out with too. So yeah, just the bad motivations all around with what she's doing here.
Yeah. Then we move on to the Humphrey Loft, where we have Rufus, the hot rocker dad, played by Matthew Settle, who probably looks like he's about maybe 5 to 6 years older than his son.
Yeah, he looked like he had him in elementary school.
Yeah, and he's there. He's mentioned in Rolling Stone magazine, as I mentioned before, as the #9 most forgotten band of the '90s. And you get typical family squabbles, and it's momentarily brought up about the absent mother. She supports Jenny's efforts to get into the party, but Rufus is like, oh no, she's bad, bad mom.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you also have Jenny addressing the invitations in this scene too, where there's the setup of how she's trying to impress Blair and how she's trying to get her way into that group.
Yes, it's mentioned that one of the minions noticed her calligraphy in art class and said that if she does all the addresses on the invitations, she can get one to the party. So, so Rufus at first jumps on her about it, but then he realizes he needs to be a dad first, and he supports Jenny.
Yeah, 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 and it's also there is that aspect of the attitude of 90s music would completely scoff at a party like the one that his daughter is creating invitations for. So it really does kind of fit that aspect too. That there was such the counter. I don't want to say counterculture, but but the Gen X contrarians that were always
Yeah.
too cool for a party like that attitude.
So next we move to outside of the Palace Hotel, and Nate is confronting Serena. Clearly something happened to them, but Nate's with Serena's best friend, and Serena doesn't want anything about it. She knows she made a mistake.
Yeah. Again, a very telling moment, and they don't necessarily say everything that happened, but they say enough to let you know that these two have participated in some kind of activity that Blair would not approve. What was also interesting to me when I was watching was that it didn't come. I don't believe it had come up at this point that Blair and Nate had been together as long as they have. I think that comes up later in the episode. So there's almost the feeling of, oh, did they get together and then she got together with and then he got together with Blair after Serena went away. Like that was a lingering question at that point in the episode. Like did
Yeah,
and
it's hard for me to remember if what I felt at the time that I first watched it, but we definitely quickly learned that Nate and Blair have been together since kindergarten.
right, and what it is I remember when I heard that in the episode, I was like, oh wait, but that history between those two, oh shit, like, oh, this is really bad.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that it was when I found out that later that they had been together so long.
All right, and then so we see the one and only time with Chuck and Nate riding a bus in the pilot episode. That's never seen again because why would these two rich kids be riding a bus when they have limos or driver services? Now, it actually we do find out later that Chuck is the only one who does have a limo because it does make sense because even rich people in New York still have nowhere to park a car
Right.
unless you're someone who owns multiple hotels.
I was going to say you would assume that a hotel chain would have a limo service, if like at least contracted to them.
But the other Upper East Side teens all have driver services, which you just got like a town car. It's the pre-Uber days.
The other thing with that scene on the bus, though, is that it also sets up that recurring gag of, I go to school with you.
Yes.
Like, I go here.
And while Chuck is having none of it, Nate does comment, "Oh, that's funny." Yes, despite being very good looking, Dan is apparently a nobody at this school.
Yeah. And they really set it up that he is kind of almost antisocial and sticks to himself. And
Yes, we get the first instance of nervous Dan where he just kind of like after they get off the bus, he just kind of rambles on to himself like he's still talking to them.
yeah.
And that's definitely a recurring trait for Dan. He's definitely a bit nervous.
Yeah, and we actually see that in later scenes in this episode too.
Yes, definitely. And then we get Blair and on the Met steps, flanked by her minions, talking to Jenny as Serena comes up. And they are sitting on the Met steps, which are basically an extension of the New York City sidewalks, which are quite dirty. And they're wearing these very fancy designer clothes.
And they are just casually sitting, yeah. And also, the kiss on the lips party. I was trying to remember the name of it, but it's the kiss on the lips party, which, I mean, I feel like it's a little. I want to say on the nose, but it's
Yes, I believe that is the name of one of the books, "Kiss on the Lips." And yes, that is the party of the week, as is tradition for Gossip Girl. Most episodes end in a party of the week.
yeah.
So, and this week's party is the kiss on the lips.
Yeah, and and that whole interaction between the two of them and is so interesting. Where it's, oh yeah, my best friend, and you can tell that there's that tension there. There's that.
Yes, my best friend. But you can't come because there's it's just not any more invitations. There's not enough.
Yeah.
We're at capacity.
We ran out of invitations and we're at capacity. Sorry. Had I known yesterday, like had I known you were coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and so yeah, it really does set all of that up.
They do plan. Serena, asked, for a little date there, and I don't know. I think if this show was written a few years later, Blair would be definitely a queer coded character.
Yeah, I can see
There's
that.
definitely some sexual tension in there.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. And there really is that like with the back and forth, like that kind of yeah, absolutely.
All right, and we are back for Act Two, and we are in the on the street with Dan and Rufus hanging flyers for their band. Rufus makes dad jokes about getting off your blog, and
Yeah, like and just again firmly letting us know that this is late 2000s when blogs were like still we're at that point for a dad to be referencing a blog, it tells you that blogs were on their way out. That like dads had just learned the word.
but I mean Rufus is a cool dad, and
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. Like even then, were musicians still like hanging flyers around town?
Um. Yeah. That. I mean. I doubt it. I mean. Maybe in New York. I mean, in New York, when sometimes in certain areas you'll see flyers hanging up,
Yeah, that's true.
but like you'd think that one of the nine, that number nine in the 10 most forgotten bands of the 1990s would have a publicist.
Yeah. You were just in Rolling Stone magazine, and
Yeah.
I think you could have like a website. Come on.
Yeah, you should have an agent. You should have someone working for you at this point.
And so then from that scene, we burst into the hospital room with Serena coming to kidnap brother Eric. They're going to a shopping trip at Bendel's.
Yeah. Um, it's funny. I had a little bit of anxiety at that. Like, oh my god, like you're taking him out of the hospital. Is that okay? Is that safe? But it's also the connection that the two of them have was so touching, and how she wants to get him out and get him doing things, and doesn't want to hide him away, and how she's not ashamed of her brother, and what has happened to him, where it really shows you that Serena wants him to be better, not be hidden.
Yes. Even early on, I think we see that they kind of took care of themselves to a certain extent. Lily probably was not the best mother.
Yeah,
Really.
you get that impression a lot that they were sort of the kids on their own, sort of the like the Upper East Side version of a latchkey kid almost.
So then we move into Bendel's, and Jenny is shopping for a dress, and she has called Dan for advice because she apparently has no friends either, and no mom because the mom is in Hudson, and Dad will not go into a department store.
Yeah. Uh, like, come on, Dad. Like there's it's not hard to do. You can go in and tell your daughter she looks beautiful, and and at the same time though, I love that they set up this relationship with Dan and Jenny.
Yes.
They are a close brother and sister, that they know that their parents are going through shit and they have each other for it, and that I love the relationship that establishes.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, it's awkward to go with your dress shopping with your sister,
Yes.
and he does it anyway.
And clearly, like they have separate interests, but they, yes, like as you said, they are there for each other. And then we see Serena and Eric show up, and Dan, like quickly like ducks behind the clothes rack.
Yeah, again, you see nervous Dan. Yeah, the nervous Dan spotting of the of the week, where he dips behind the coat rack as soon as Serena shows up, and he has a chance to meet this girl that he's been crushing on forever, and hides.
Yes. And we also see, so we already saw Jenny, cozying up with Blair, trying to get in with Blair's group, but she also kind of is playing both sides of the fence here. She gives Serena an invitation. She's like, here's an invitation, but don't tell anyone where you got it.
Which I also find hilarious because there's only one person writing the invitations. So where don't tell anyone where you got this thing that is in the handwriting that I was complimented on and hired to do this thing for. No one will figure it out.
Yes. Then we see Nate and Chuck smoking a joint in the park. They're talking about Nate and Blair having sex for the first time, so apparently they have not had sex yet. And we got the strong bro culture vibes. You're entitled to type that ass.
Yeah. You instantly learn how disgusting Chuck is.
Yes.
And yeah, episode 1 is not Chuck's finest anything.
And so another line right here about Chuck's mother, getting a medication from. People use that to excuse the canon, as the pilot not being part of canon because Chuck's mother is not around after this, and I won't go too detailed because it is a major plot point later on, but she is not in the picture, and so people use that as an excuse to forgive Chuck for what happened in the pilot, saying it's not in canon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know what I watched.
Yeah,
I know what I watched
yes.
in the show, and I know that that it didn't bode well for my opinion of Chuck. Yeah. And here's the other side of Chuck is that I've known Chuck. I've known Chucks before, and I've been Nate. In that sense, I've been a Nate to a Chuck before, and
you play along,
yeah,
because you don't want to go,
you don't want to say it to your friends, and now, as an adult, I look back and I teach my kids to be better than that. I teach my son to be better than that. I teach my oldest and my daughter to be better than that, and but I. Can't say that I have never known somebody to be a disgusting creep like Chuck.
Yeah.
And have looked for excuses for them, just like you're saying with the mom.
Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, we've all gone through that. But I do think, like you said, I do think that is one thing that Gen Z is. They will call people out on it more.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, and I feel like shows like this made it acceptable to call people out on it.
Yeah.
And showed that it was wrong. And also showed people that, like, yes, this is happening. This isn't this there are people doing this, Main characters do this. Whereas so many other shows it's the bad person that rolled into town for 3 episodes and does something shitty.
Yeah.
But no, this is a main character, someone that you're going to have to watch for a while. You're going to have to lose respect for them right off the bat.
Yeah. Close, and something you see in real life. Close friends and family are sometimes shitty people, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
All right, and so moving on to Blair and Serena meeting for drinks. They just serve kids at upscale bars, apparently. And
the drinking from right off the bat was like, wait, this is high school, right? They said high school. They said high school. They said prep school. They said all of these things. They're talking about Dartmouth, so they're not in college yet.
So yes, the most of the main cast are juniors. Eric and Jenny are freshmen. But yes, apparently they can just be served anywhere in New York.
Yeah, they can just walk into bars and order martinis.
So yeah, Serena says she doesn't want to be queen anymore. Apparently, before she left, she was in the position that Blair is now as queen bee. They want to be. She wants to be friends, and they seen them mend fences. It's mentioned that while Serena was away, Blair's parents split up because apparently her father is gay and left her mom for a
For
man.
yeah, and left her mom for another man. And again, it's one of those things that like that is traumatic. Divorce is traumatic, and you know, learning something about your parents that you didn't know is traumatic.
Yeah.
And so it's really setting up with Blair and Serena both have very traumatic family issues taking place right now that are both more important than the friendship. Both really need a friend
Yes.
to help them through.
So yeah. Right before this happened with Blair, her best friend in the world just kind of disappeared
Yeah,
suddenly,
to go to a new school.
and then and of course at the same time her boyfriend starts acting kind of weird.
Yeah. As yeah. Yeah, as soon as her
So
best friend disappears.
so even though Blair is not the best person, you obviously right away kind of feel sorry for her.
And Blair seems intuitive, you know? And you almost get that sense that she knows there's something there and she doesn't want to believe it, but she's waiting for Serena to tell her. And like and it leaves Serena kind of hanging at the end that you can feel that there's something she's still holding back.
Yeah, yeah. And so, as that scene ends, we go back to the Brooklyn loft with Jenny and Dan, and Jenny's kind of calling out Dan for his disappearing act at the store, and tricks Dan into going to talk to Serena. Oh, she's all alone. She's probably just drinking by herself. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. And they reference the birthday party that
Yeah.
that he saw her at a birthday party.
Yes, and this birthday party becomes a big part of the lore of Gossip Girl. This is where they met. Serena was drunk, but she talked to Dan, who was accidentally invited to this party, the first high school party he went to, and then soon after that she kind of disappeared.
Yeah. So even more, of that of her disappearance affecting other people, and and it's funny because she's allowed to disappear, but you have to recognize that there's a whole world. I don't think that Serena really recognizes that she's the center of an ecosystem of social culture in her circle. That she's almost a nucleus.
Well, I think she does realize that, and that is kind of why she just left suddenly, because she knew she was going to cause huge issues for everyone.
That does make sense. But then more to the point, I don't think that she really recognized what disappearing really entailed. That it wasn't just going to be her disappearing. That she's leaving a vacuum. That when she came back, I don't think she was expecting that vacuum to have been filled.
Yeah. And so, speaking of that vacuum, we find Serena at the Palace Bar, drinking her sorrows away. And she is confronted by Chuck, and they kind of go back and forth with some quips, and Chuck is pretty creepy. And he offers to take her back into the kitchen to get a truffle oil grilled cheese sandwich, which sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like the skin crawling of Chuck throughout the entire conversation leading up to, and the whole like, let's go to the kitchen, and you see the whole like Chuck trying to get her alone, which becomes a motif.
Yes, yes, he definitely like tells the cooks and stuff after they make the sandwich, because he doesn't know how to cook himself.
Yeah.
Get out of here, go shoo.
Yeah, he clears the kitchen
Yeah.
in some grand gesture that he thinks is impressive.
But yeah, so before we get to
Get to
that,
the
though, we do have it cuts to Nate entering Blair's bedroom, and he starts to confess. Blair's wearing lingerie. They're obviously about to have sex for the first time. But he begins to confess the secret of why Serena went away. And as it's cutting back and forth between him talking to Blair and Chuck and Serena talking, because apparently Chuck also saw this. He was, you know, lurking, watching his best friend have sex for
Yeah,
some creepy
yeah, he
reason.
was. Yeah, but that seems like such a Chuck thing to do.
Yeah,
Like, oh
yeah.
wow, yeah, there's two people having sex. I'm gonna sit and watch. Yup. Of course, also you're having sex in a bar at a wedding. Like, you're not really hiding it well.
So this is actually at Grand Central Station as well. This is an actual bar that's at Grand Central Station.
Oh really?
Yeah, because the wedding happened there, the Shepherd wedding.
Oh okay.
Yes,
Yeah. So yeah, you're having sex at Grand Central Station.
yes.
You might get an audience. I don't feel like you have an assumption of privacy at the place where people tend to refer to as one of the busiest places to find things on earth.
So as we're flashing back to Nate and Serena hooking up, Chuck begins to get very aggressive, starts grabbing her.
Yeah, and really tries to force himself
Yes.
on her, and really, and
Luckily, it appears, unfortunately, it appears that Serena probably has dealt with this before and it reacts appropriately and knees him right in the crotch and
Yeah.
gets out of there.
yeah, and did what I've taught my daughter to do. Hit him. Actually, what I tell my daughter is the number one rule when we watch horror movies is finish the job. you get him down, and if he's still coming after you, you get him down until he's not coming after you anymore.
Yeah, I believe that's also one of the rules for Zombieland. You got to do the double tap.
Yeah, double tap. Yep, and absolutely, and yeah, good on her. Like, fucking hurt him and get away, and yeah.
And as she gets off, Dan, the perfect stalker moment where his crush actually just bumps into him conveniently.
Yeah.
That worked out perfectly for him.
Yeah.
And he finds her phone and he picks it up as she runs off and
Yeah, and Dan and Chuck share that look.
Yeah.
And you kind of have that, like, you're already, I was already excited for you, like, this isn't over between them. Like, and because that was that their second time meeting, or did they already meet at the school and he's like, I go here?
Yeah.
But like, because once again, because I think Chuck also didn't really recognize him again.
probably not.
Yeah, I think that was also brought up, that Chuck didn't recognize him, and Dan was like, while Dan was retrieving the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so that sets up the tension for the end of the act. We get on to the third act. Nate is running with his father in Central Park, and of course, very competitive. The captain beats his son.
Yeah, man, it was that whole thing. The captain and we didn't really touch on this earlier, but Nate from the start is one of my favorite characters because of his relationship with the captain. And my relationship with my dad wasn't like that, but it was troubled in its own ways. Mm-hmm. But it was just, I really felt for him right away. And much the same way that, like, I've known Chuck's, I've known Nate's. I've known those guys who can't tell their dad something as simple as, like, no, I don't want to go to the same college you went to. Yeah. Like, yeah, I know that, like, you're very proud of that, but, like, I don't want to do that. So that race, when they were racing and his dad beat him, and it's like, you're nothing against beating your kid in a race, but to be such an asshole about it, like to to really make your kid like feel like shit for not being faster than you yet, like.
Yeah, so that is definitely a central part of Nate's character. He is a legacy. His, family has, his future planned out more than any of the other characters. The other characters actually, have something of their own. Especially Blair has like a very clear path planned out of what she wants.
Yeah.
And as does Dan. Serena's a little more wishy-washy, and Chuck, he's more on the business role than the college path. He's on the business path.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, and they. What was I trying to say here? They they all have, even though their parents don't necessarily plan all of their lives, their parents are all very invested in their plans too.
Yes. Yes.
You know, like. But you're right. The worst of them is Nate. That it is, you are expected to go and become is it a lawyer, or I feel like there's something that his dad does that he's expected to become.
Well, so his dad is a financial guy.
Oh, so okay.
He's not he definitely wants him to go to the same school, and it definitely becomes more of a plot point of what the plans are for Nate is. So we'll get into that in the future.
Yeah.
But that definitely, there is definitely a plan for him. His mom's side of the family is actually probably the richer, and they are actually the Vanderbilts.
Oh, okay.
So they are very old money.
Yeah.
So also in the scene, the captain finds out that Nate and Blair broke up, and he is very distraught about that. He's like, "Oh no, you have to get back together with Blair. You have to get back together."
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more to that, but I think we find out later that it's tied to the business deal with the parents. He's trying to get into business with Eleanor Waldorf.
Yeah. And again, it's just the way that these parents are trying to use their kids as pawns, and the flip side of it, the way that it's, you're trying to have your kid marry his high school sweetheart, like, come on, dude, like he's
at
not
16.
even at 16, like, come on, dude, like that doesn't sound like
But again,
good parenting.
So that is the original purpose of marriage, though.
It really is. I know. It's so funny when people are like, when people argue about traditional marriage, I'm like, should we be trading land and crowns and novelties?
Okay, so after that, we do go back to the Palace Hotel. Dan is arriving at the desk with Serena, trying to return Serena's phone. Not sure why he didn't just return it again. He brought it home and then came back in the morning. That's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll just run with that.
Yeah.
The desk clerk is giving him a hard time, but luckily Serena just is happy to walk through, and she says, "Oh yeah, oh, you found my phone. Thank you. And then Serena's mom, Lily, also comes up and is trying to get Serena to go to the party because again, she cares about social standing and blah blah blah.
Yeah, her mom is very interested in her attending this party, and she's trying to tell her mom that, like, not only do I not want to go, like, I'm not really welcome. Like, they don't really Blair doesn't really want me there, like.
But she can't really say that because then she has to explain why.
Yeah, exactly. And her mom couldn't handle any kind of rift between friends, because that needs to be swept under a rug.
Yeah. And I forgot to also mention, Dan definitely makes an awkward joke about Prince Charming having a foot fetish to the desk clerk.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Dan Humphrey has diarrhea of the mouth sometimes.
That's funny.
But luckily Dan's there to give Serena an excuse to get out of the party. And when she introduces him as Dan Humphrey, Lily's eyebrow definitely raises at that name.
Yeah, and there you see the recognition, um, and
And then
the quick assumption. Do they cut right away to is the next scene?
no, not quite the next scene, but yeah. So she raises her eyebrow at the name Humphrey, but then when she hears Lincoln Hawk, she's like, "What?"
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because they say that they're going to the band to see
Yes.
the band. Yeah.
The next scene is Nate and Blair at the restaurant. Blair is wearing her battle attire there, and they're trying to Nate's trying to reconcile on behalf of his dad, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because like they make a deal, and it really is like, hey, this is how we stay together, and it really felt like a business transaction, you know?
And that deal is that Nate will pretend Serena doesn't exist, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, he's not allowed to talk to her, and he'll pretend like she doesn't exist. Which I immediately was thinking to myself, how long is that going to last?
Then we moved, so that we find out, yes, Lily and Rufus do know each other because Lily comes to the gallery to confront Rufus. They have a history. They're kind of flirty, but Rufus is obviously still, because apparently she cheated on him with Trent Reznor.
Yeah, I loved that. There's a comment about how she moved on from rock stars to financiers or something like that.
To billionaires.
To billionaires, yeah, from rock
Yeah.
stars to billionaires. Yeah, and yeah, there's the history is really laid out. They clearly had they lay out that they had this thing, and you also kind of learn that Serena and Eric's mom had a wild side to her in her younger days.
Yeah.
That she was out, partying with rock stars.
Yes. And I just kind of have to wonder if Trent Reznor has ever seen this scene. And what his thoughts are.
I want to see the spit take of Trent Reznor sitting in his home with his,
Yes.
just sitting at his house for the first time in 2007, and having to think to himself, "Did I sleep with her?"
And so we're back at the loft in Brooklyn. Dan is getting ready for his date, and Jenny's getting ready for the party. Rufus is semi-creepy, talking about how his daughter looks just like his mom, like the mother, and like just has a weird look on his face.
Yeah. It's awkward, but
Especially with the age of the actor.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little awkward.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and to be fair, the portrayal of a father is sometimes difficult not to be creepier than it actually is.
Yeah.
Because when we're watching those people on camera, they don't look appropriately apart in age to be father and daughter, and there's like a much bigger suspension of disbelief required there.
So we see Blair's mom being horrible to her, criticizing her looks. Yeah. So thankfully, we never see this actress again.
Yeah. And it's funny because it is those kind of things that you get that insight to how those mother-daughter relationships when they do focus so much on aesthetics and appearances
Yeah.
and the figure and look and everything, it's really gross.
And so we get a montage of Chuck, Blair, Nate, Cotty, and Iz partying in a limo on the way to the Kiss on the Lips party. Uh, they look like they're having all kinds of fun. They're popping champagne and got music playing. But Nate is kind of sitting in the back and doesn't seem like he's really enjoying himself.
Yeah, yeah. And you really come to understand that Nate wanted out of that relationship and saw his way out and was gonna take it, and then had to and took it, and then and was put right back in.
Yeah, his dad forced him back in. And now he's stuck.
Yeah, and now he's just feeling stuck in that future that his dad has laid out for him.
Yeah. We get a quick scene of Dan looking love struck, picking up Serena in the lobby. You know, meet cute moment. He's staring as she comes, up on the upper balcony there.
Yeah, cute.
And then so we move to the party. Everyone's arriving. Chuck makes some creepy comments and goes into full predator mode when he sees Jenny. First Jenny, she seems just kind of excited. Older guy, paying attention to her. Understandable.
Yeah. And yeah, and she, she doesn't hear that he's the remarks that he made before he starts,
of course not.
Circling the waters. and so yeah. I mean, she just has a guy talking to him, and I just remember that just cringing when they were talking.
And so it's tough because Taylor Momsen is the actual age of the actress she's playing, which is 14, and then everyone else is in like 19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
So it just makes it even more cringy.
Yeah. It was all around just really gross.
And we got Serena and Dan walking on the sidewalk, and they meet Rufus as he's loading equipment. And, awkwardly cute moment when Serena realizes that Dan brought her to meet his dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was cute also. And, and to see his dad's band. So you also, she learns that he was, I believe it even comes up then that he was the number 9 of 10 most forgotten bands of the 90s.
And so we cut back, and Chuck has separated Jenny from the party, and he's starting to kiss her, and she's clearly nervous. It's really, really uncomfortable. But Chuck picks up on it. He backs off. We think, okay, not too bad. He was a little aggressive, but he backed off, and they start talking. He offers her a drink though, and then. Jenny's kind of secretly texting behind her back.
Yeah. And yeah, she learns quickly this is not a good situation and I'm uncomfortable and I can't get out of this. Yeah. And there's that moment where you're a little worried because she texted the emergency because the prior emergency was the fashion emergency, whereas now he almost blows off the text because of it.
Yeah, because we immediately see Dan and Serena coming out of the show. Of course, we don't get to see Lincoln Hawk playing.
Yeah, I was very disappointed in that.
But we do get some flirty banner, and Dan does get the text from Jenny, and he, like you said, he looks like he's about to blow it off, but he says, she's having problems with some guy named Chuck, and Serena's like, oh, no.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, when Chuck,
that's a real problem.
The word Chuck, it's like, nope, let's go.
Which is good.
Yeah. Which again, it shows that very big shift in that very big culture shift of calling that shit out. Yeah. That I feel like if this show was made 10 years earlier, it would have been a different storyline.
Yeah, they clearly all know that he is a shitty person, but they just kind of accept it because he's part of the club.
Yeah.
So then we get the arrival at the party of Serena and Dan, and immediately people just start texting instead of telling each other that she's there. For some reason, texting culture is in full swing.
Right. Well, and if you remember early texting, that really was like it was almost T9. Like What?
The T9 texting.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we cut back to the rooftop. Chuck is now forcing himself on Jenny, and she's actively saying no. It's, really hard to watch. But luckily, Dan and Serena arrive, and Dan just drops Chuck with a punch, and I cheered.
Yeah, same. I watched with my wife, Robin. Both of us like, got him.
Yeah, every time.
There's a moment where it looks like he's not going to hit him, where he pulls him away and they start walking away, and you're like, okay, but she's safe. But then when he turns, it's like, got him.
But then, of course, Chuck, has to slut shame Serena, and as they're walking away, so Chuck being more of a douchebag. So
Chuck does nothing to earn any points at all in the pilot.
But we end the episode with Dan and Jenny leaving the party, and then we get this cute scene where Dan grabs Serena's hand, come with us, and Serena's kind of surprised, but that's a very cute scene.
Yeah, and really sets that friendship and that relationship up nicely.
And we see Nate seeing Dan and Serena holding hands, and he's sullenly drinking a beer, and then we get Blair and Chuck standing next to each other, getting some chemistry vibes there. What do you think about the chemistry there? Anything?
It was neither of those characters left the episode looking good necessarily. And so I felt like there was something maybe there. I didn't really feel chemistry, more of an alliance waiting to happen between the two of them.
Yeah. And then we end the episode with Jenny, Dan, and Serena in the cab. And
yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, we are back, and we're going to get into some segments. We're going to start out with episode grades. Steve, what did you think?
So I kind of need to give this one 2 grades. One as an overall episode of a TV show, which I think was a B. It was pretty engaging, didn't really drag at all. But I bump it up to an A when it comes to being a pilot episode, because pilots are so difficult to weave to introduce all of these fresh characters that we've never seen before and weave their stories together. I think it was an A pilot, but overall a B TV show. A B episode.
So is your final grade a B or an A?
I'm going to say a B.
Okay. I am going to give it an A. I think Josh Schwartz kills it at pilot episodes. I think it did a great job of introducing us to all the characters. Great music. We get drama. We get action. We get all the relationships set up. I think pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give it an A.
That's a fair grade.
All right. Moving on to our stock watch. Who had a good episode?
So I'd say, first of all, I feel that Serena and Dan, their stock goes up immediately. Both of them, the way that they are together, they really have kind of almost power couple energy early on. So I feel like both of them, their stock both went up. Meanwhile, obviously, when it comes to sliding stock, Chuck's stock took a serious hit throughout this episode. It started, dipping and then took a really serious hit. And when you thought it couldn't go down any lower, it did.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. Dan obviously stock up, gets a date with his dream girl. Serena comes back and makes a splash. She's there for her brother, and I think Jenny also had a stock up moment. She's showing she knows how to play the game. She's young, but she's on the rise. But yeah, Chuck definitely stock down. Horrible episode. It's going to be interesting to see if they can redeem him. As we know, he is a main cast member, so he sticks around. So it's going to be interesting to see where they take him.
I'd also say Nate and Blair stock went down, both of them, and I
Yeah.
loved Nate as a character, but acquiescing to a relationship you're not happy in, for your father's sake, like, man, your stock's plummeting there.
Yeah, you could clearly tell that he was not having a good time by the end of the episode.
Yeah,
And same with Blair. She is, she's worried. Serena's back, and she's insecure about that. They've always had this competition, and for the most part, she's always lost.
yeah. Now I also feel like oh man, I wish I could think of his name. Rufus's stock went up, but I also feel like Rufus's stock is like Dogecoin.
Yeah, yeah. But both of the parents, I kind of think were fairly net neutral this episode. As far as Lillian and Rufus, obviously Blair's mom Eleanor was horrible. The captain's horrible, but they're kind of baseline. They didn't really drop. They just kind of are
Yeah,
there.
they're just already there. Although you could argue that Blair's mom's stock dropped so much that she was removed from the cast and replaced with a new mom.
Touche, touche. All right, moving on. What do you think was the best outfit of the episode?
I actually, because I'm such a much more casual person, and I loved Serena's original outfit with like the skirt, the little
From the train ride?
yeah, from the
Okay.
train ride.
Yeah, the kind of it's something like I guess sort of boho chic, somewhat.
Yeah, yeah,
For me, it was the outfit that Blair wore in her sushi lunch with Nate, where they were reconciling. Obviously, like a power outfit with the red cardigan. You have the white button up with the blue stripes, blue navy stripes, and like an untied bow tie hanging down. I really like that.
yeah, yeah, and it really fed into her entire approach to that conversation, and that, like I said, it felt like a business meeting.
Her outfit was very intentional.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, any thoughts, any guesses on who Gossip Girl is?
My first guess, and I think it's a long shot, but my original take is Chuck. That
Okay.
I feel like Chuck is nosy and is always there.
Yep, he was watching at the Shepherd wedding. He was watching the sex scene, so he knew that was happening.
What's funny is that the only thing going in Chuck's favor for him not to be Gossip Girl is that he saw Serena and Nate at the wedding and didn't talk about it.
True. Yeah.
But Chuck is my current guess.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up from the episode. Anything else you want to add about the episode?
Nothing I can think of about the episode itself, but I do want folks to know that they could check us out on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. X is what we used to call what
Yeah.
we call Twitter.
Yeah.
Now.
No one calls it Dex.
No one calls it X. We might also have a Threads, but
And where can they find us?
they can find us at the non-judgmental pod, breakfast pod. At the non-judgmental breakfast pod.
The non-judging breakfast pod.
At the non-judging breakfast pod. And I did write it correctly, but I'm just saying it wrong now.
We'll work on that.
We'll work on that. It's a pilot.
Yes. And yes. So, anything else you want to plug?
Also, come on out to the Christmas Village in Love Park in Philadelphia on Tuesday the 28th, and you can catch me playing some music. I'll be the guy on the stage with the ukulele.
Oh, nice. Yes, and so if, you can follow us on the socials, and then if you would like to come check me out on Twitch, I do reviews for PA medical marijuana and also play some video games and just to have a good time. So come out, check me out. It's twitch.tv/hot Capicola. Well, I think that's it for now, and thanks for stopping by. And next week we'll be back for the Wild Brunch.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye bye.